Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week I'm joined by some of my favorite husky, hairy, huggable homos to review a film, either current or classic, and dish up a little bit of movie news that's got our interest. This week, we are going to be reviewing Happy Death Day to You, the follow-up film to Happy Death Day, which came out a while back. But before we get into any of that, let me introduce you to my wonderful co-hosts. Jim Pugliafrica was here with us. Welcome, Jim. How are you?
I am here. That's me. Thanks. And welcome to the podcast, everyone.
Glad to have you here with us, babe. And Will Lindis is here with us as well. Welcome, Will.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the podcast.
Will is making
sorry, I
a
got stuck
very
in a loop.
Very clever Happy Death Day to You thematic joke. I like it. Well, a lot. That's good. That's really good. But it's taking me places I'm not ready to go yet. So yeah. Hey, I want to give a shout out to some folks that are joining us in the live chat right now. Looks like we got a few folks hanging out with us, and Big Tom is in the chat. He says, "Hey guys," he says, "y'all looking especially fetching this evening." Well, thank you, Tom. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
We try. I stood in the mirror for exactly a minute and a half to look like this today. Glad it's paying off. Anyway, so we've got a lot to talk about tonight. We're going to serve up some movie news, and then we'll move into our movie discussion. If you haven't seen Happy Death Day, the original film, chances are pretty good you probably didn't see the sequel, but we'll give you some insights. We'll give you some thoughts on whether it's maybe worth checking out if you haven't seen it yet before we go into spoilers or any of that good stuff. But we're gonna put a pin in that. Come to that later. Hey, Jordan Riley, I see you in chat. Welcome. Glad to have you with us, Jordan. Guys, are we ready for some movie news? Is it time?
I think so.
Yeah.
All right. It's been a little while since we've done movie news with all the double features and Oscars and award shows and all the other stuff we've had going on. Hello, kitty cat walking in front of the screen. Okay. Well, I'm excited to have an opportunity to do this with you guys again. So that said, here we go. Some movie news. All right, and this is the part of the show where we like to kind of put some things, on the table for discussion that's going on right now with regards to Hollywood and movies and all that good stuff. And we're going to go ahead and kick things off with Jim. Jim, what caught your interest this week? What's going on?
Well, it's like I said, it's been a long time since we've actually done movie news. As you were introing it out in my head, I was. The movie news bumper was playing, and I'm like, God, when was the last time I actually used that thing? Hopefully I still have that file, but man. So to catch up, I guess. So there's a battle going on in the movie community. That battle is between streaming services, most notably Netflix, and other movie fans, filmmakers, people who care about cinema. And recently it's Steven Spielberg, who we know, the prodigious director, has stepped forward as kind of a opponent of Netflix specifically being able to put out their movies for a very limited screening to qualify and then be eligible for big awards like movie awards like the Academy Awards and the Oscars. Specifically, he's talked about some of the bigger movies. Like this year we saw Roma, which was a Netflix production that was eligible for all of the Oscars with just a very short, like 1 week or something. Well, actually, I think it's gone on actually longer than that in some places, but a very short qualifying run. And so he's had some some things to say about Netflix, and he wants to see some changes made, especially with the Academy. And I'm going to read something that he said this just the last couple weeks. He said, "I don't believe films that are just given token qualifications in a couple of theaters for less than a week should qualify for Academy Award nomination." So he even went so far as to say, well, maybe these Netflix movies should only be up for things like Emmys, kind of as TV movies. And so there's this war going on, kind of a war going on about this this kind of disagreement. So, and it's all because I think we're seeing maybe the beginning of the decline of movie theaters. I mean, if you look at the news, I think movie theater income for the first couple months of the year are down like over 20%. I think I read somewhere. So I think there's a little bit of panic going on around these streaming services that are producing their own movies, showing these movies strictly on streaming and not going in the theaters. On the other side, we have people saying, hey, what about the movies that can't get into the theaters, that can't get into your multiplex because they're small indie movies, or they're movies about, that kind of focus on the inclusion of previously, people that have been previously kind of marginalized by the movies or so forth. What kind of platform are they going to get? So we've got this ongoing thing going on. And I don't know. I just brought this up. There's been no resolution to this yet. So we're going to have to see how. I think this is going to be an ongoing thing as streaming platforms evolve. But I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you guys come down hard on either side of this thing? And in terms of let's keep it to like, do you think that like movies that are only get like produced on Netflix and only get a very limited qualifying run in theaters should be eligible for Oscars?
There is an absolute ton to unpack with all of this.
Yeah, I know. It's a lot. Sorry.
Yeah, and part of it's because we're in a society where you have to take your side and defend your side and pick your side. And so a lot of the discourses on this particular topic has really gone off the rails, especially like on Twitter and such. They've turned into like, is Spielberg a good filmmaker or a bad filmmaker?
Wait, Will,
is
are you
Netflix
saying
good?
Something on Twitter went off the rails? Is that what you're saying?
Right. Is Netflix good or bad? And I think that you can have these like Netflix can be this thing that has its pros and has its cons while also being, in my estimation, right on this particular subject. And Spielberg can still be one of the best filmmakers who's ever lived and ever made films while being wrong on this particular subject. And I don't think we have to muddy those waters too much. So here's my thought with it. And you hit on a good portion of it. If you live in New York, LA, Chicago, Austin, certain areas, you can see just about every film that gets nominated in every category if you're lucky, especially New York and LA. If you don't live in one of those major hub cities, then that pool of available films dwindles quite a bit. Mm-hmm. Foreign language films, independent films. If you think about the ones that were up for Best Picture this year, you probably could have seen at, just any general like city in the United States. You probably could have seen Black Panther. You probably could have seen Bohemian Rhapsody and A Star Is Born, and maybe on the outside edge Green Book, but outside of that, you wouldn't be able to have seen some of these other films. And those aren't, and they're not necessarily Netflix films. Think about Moonlight from a few years ago. Mm-hmm. That was not in every theater nationwide. And so once you start limiting the pool of what's eligible, because you're trying to take a swipe at Netflix, you really start to hurt the eligibility of other independent films. And I think it also screams a little false to me as well, because part of the argument is also comes down to fidelity. In other words, like, oh, but we want to make sure people can only watch these films the way they're designed to be filmed, or the way they're designed to be viewed, big screen, big sound, all of that stuff. all well and good. The Academy itself doesn't watch the movies that way. They send out screener discs to every voting member, and they're watching them on their tablets and on their home entertainment systems. So even the voting body isn't watching the films, air quotes, the way it's supposed to be seen. Netflix allows a lot of films to be distributed and in front of audiences that wouldn't otherwise have the chance. They have marketing issues. They bury films sometimes once they've, if they're not one of the few marquee films, they get buried in the Netflix algorithm. Those are legitimate issues, but awards eligibility is not a legitimate issue, at least for me.
Yeah. And go ahead, Brad.
No, please go ahead.
I was just going to add one more thing that happened very recently, like a couple days ago. Netflix did respond to the criticism and kind of taking issue with Spielberg taking the opposite side. They said on Twitter, they said, "We love cinema. Here are some things we also love. We love access for people who can't always afford or live in towns without theaters." Will, you talked about this. We talked about they love letting everyone everywhere enjoy releases at the same time, right? We know about, these rolling out, these slow roll out releases in movie theaters, right? Where Will gets to see movies like 3 or 4 weeks before sometimes the Tucson audience does, right? We've expressed frustration with that. And also giving filmmakers more ways to share art, right? So again, some movies are never going to get theatrical distribution. Some may get a streaming distribution down the road. So, and then Netflix says, these things are not mutually exclusive. And that's their position. I see their position, but also for me, I'm a little bit sad and worried, I guess, about the theatrical experience and what it's going to become after all this. So, Brad, I'm sorry I cut you off, but it's your turn to weigh in.
That's all right. I mean, I think good cinema should be good cinema, whether it's in the movie theaters, whether it's on Netflix, whether it's, straight to VOD. I mean, I think about, films at South by Southwest and Fantastic Fest that never get picked up for distribution that we get to see at a film festival. And then what happens to them from there? I don't know. You know what I mean? And so if a distributor like Netflix is willing to pick up a film and put it out there and, maybe they put some money behind it, they give it a limited theatrical run. Yes, it checks off the box for Academy Award, eligibility, but also too, I like having choices. You know what I mean? Like with Roma, for instance, I really wanted to see it in theaters when the 70mm version was at the Loft. Unfortunately, I ended up going on a work trip and we didn't get to do that before I left, and I ended up catching it on Netflix anyway. But I liked being able to choose. Like, do I want to watch this on streaming? Do I want to see this in a theater? I feel like it kind of puts the power in the hands of the the viewer, so to speak. So yeah. I think that's a good thing. Tom says in the chat, it kind of feels like sour grapes a little bit. I think I kind of agree. And I think the ship has kind of left port at this point too, right? Like, what are they going to do next year? Be like, oh, sorry, it was a mistake to let a Netflix movie be up for nomination. We're not going to let that happen anymore. I not that the Academy is anything like the Supreme Court, but I kind of feel like once a precedent has been set, you know what I mean? Like, it's really hard to walk it back. Ooh, a sports analogy. The instant replay has got to be so obvious to reverse the call. You know what I mean? And I don't know that that's going to happen here.
I'll allow it. I think there's this fear of new technologies that always exists, but new technologies exist. Brad, you and I, actually all three of us work in or around or adjacent to technology in some way, shape, or form. And so we know that you can't unring that bell. You can't take your finger out of that dam once it starts to flood. The same conversations that we're having right now about Netflix is ruining the film industry are the same conversations that were had with the introduction of VCRs. Because once people can start recording things, no one's going to go see movies anymore. With the advent of television as well, I can watch things at home. No one's going to go watch movies anymore. But the thing is people like that communal experience. They like the big wall of sound, the big wall of visuals. And yeah, it's probably, different new media, new technology is going to affect some of those sales, and it's going to be up to the theaters to adapt accordingly. We're starting to see some of them doing that now with the Movie Pass stuff. Like after Movie Pass and was it Cinema, you starting to see like AMC and Cinemark coming up with their own versions, and that has been to some degree successful for them.
Well, and when you think about the normal user's the wrong word, the normal moviegoer, it's not even just seeing the movie. Sometimes it's the social experience. Like I get really excited to meet up with friends and go see a movie that we know is going to be loud and bombastic and visually pleasing. Like I don't like watching horror movies at home, but I love watching horror movies with friends in a crowded theater where people are like throwing their popcorn and screaming, and you know what I mean? Like exactly. So, whether this hurts or hinders, movie theaters, I don't know that there is an easy answer for that, but we're going to see, because I think, tandem release could continue to be a thing. And I'm curious to see how it shakes out.
One thing that's going to be also helpful to look at is I know that movie sales are supposed to be down, or theatricals ticket sales are down 20% from last year, right, Jim? But also last year by this point, we had a release of a giant blockbuster movie in Black Panther, which came out second week of February. Right. We don't have our first of those coming out until March 8th, Captain Marvel. So we don't have that drawing people in. And also our best picture film, last year we had Shape of Water, which had a very late December theatrical release, which means anyone that wanted to ride the, I saw this got an Oscar, I hear this is getting a lot of buzz, I guess I should go see it now, didn't happen until like January, February of last year. Whereas Green Book had an earlier in the I think it was
more people had a chance to see it before it got its notoriety.
So I think I'm not worried about the state of movies. I'm Netflix has issues. Netflix is not above reproach, but I do believe that they're at least in the right on this issue.
Well, maybe worried is a strong word. I guess I would just prefer not to see the day when those of us who have children and their children, say, oh, remember the day when we went to the movie, we went to this place, we left the house and they turned the lights down and it was a big screen. And, we saw this movie with a bunch of strangers and it felt much different than sitting in my living room. Don't want to see that go away. Now, there are some people who say, don't worry, Jim, that'll never go away. But then you have, like Sammy W. here says, buggy whips for the most part. Which is an expression, I guess, to mean, hopelessly outmoded things will always, will be replaced. There are probably not many more buggy whips. You can't buy buggy whips probably at Walmart anymore or whatever. So, I just would hate to see it go away and be replaced by something else that, in my mind, might not be as fulfilling.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I know Will and I both have news bits to talk about too. So I don't want to stall the conversation too long. I think if you think about it in terms of how the experience is changing, right? I know I talk about VR a lot, but like there is an app right now called Big Screen, which I think I've talked about. Jim, you watched Jaws in a virtual movie theater in Big Screen, if you remember. They are partnering up with movie studios and selling VR movie tickets to releases where you get to go be in the theater with other people watching a movie. You can mute them if they're being stupid, which is nice. But your virtual movie ticket lets you see a movie that's in theaters now. You don't have to leave your house. You're still sitting in a giant movie theater. You've still got 3D surround sound, with your headphones and stuff. And so, I don't know that that's going to help movie theaters either. It's changing the experience, but it gives people, one more option, so to speak. And, maybe movie theaters need to start doing some different things if they want to keep people coming to their brick and mortar place, right? Maybe it's time for them to change things up a little bit somehow. I don't know.
It keeps films accessible also to people who have concerns about like environmental issues and stuff like that, you know, like burning of fossil fuels, those types of things. Until we change infrastructure, maybe the best thing that some people can do is investing more in like virtual tickets, day and date releases for, you know, if that's something that interests them. The movie theaters are still going to exist. They're going to, you know, we're going to see movie theaters at least through our lifetimes.
Yeah, I don't think they're going away anytime soon, you know. Yeah. So
I'm not sure, guys, but it's definitely something. This is something that I think we're going to hear about for a while, a long time to come, until something happens. I mean, we'll see. We'll just keep an eye on it. Maybe we'll be reporting on it on our 600th episode or something. We'll see.
And you might see more niche style, like, you know, maybe you see less of just the kind of the Cinema 14, the Cinema 20, and you might see more of like Alamo Drafthouse is an example I use here in Austin. Almost every major screening, because of the algorithm they use for which theater goes in, is full or close to full. And they've been successful enough that they are expanding a new theater. No, they're adding their 7th here in Austin, and they're pretty much adding every few months a new one pops up in another city. So at least their model has been profitable and successful. So the idea of making it an experience that's not just the movie experience, but there is a culture to it. The, you know, be quiet or we'll kick you out, but also here, let us serve you dinner and a beer. Like that they've created themselves. They've created for themselves like a spot within the market that people are. It's advantageous. You know, instead of doing dinner and a movie as a date, you can do dinner and a movie for a date, and it's super convenient and super fun. So I think that's probably what we're going to see it more of is more kind of creative film solutions that still adhere to the love of film while also like figuring out what their clientele needs.
Just bring your Tide pen with you in case you get ketchup from your burger all over your shirt because you're eating it in the dark.
It happens.
You can't kick the waiter out for making noise.
Oh, goodness. Well, we'll have to see what happens. Speaking of Alamo, we're going to be spending a fuck ton of time in Alamo Drafthouse theaters next week. We'll talk more about that here in a bit. But it's already putting me in the mood a little bit, Will. So glad you mentioned that. Let's do this. Let's move on. Will, what have you got this week?
Yeah, so I kind of knew that we were going to spend a little bit more time on Jim, so I'm almost using my news item as a micro plug for something that got announced this week, and that's so we've known for a while that Ari Aster, who is the writer and director of one of my favorite films of last year, Hereditary, has a new film coming out this summer called Midsommar, Midsommar. So the first trailer for that just came out. I think it just came out today, actually. And it is so wonderful. It looks like this story about the lead in it is Florence Pugh, P-U-G-H. Fuck, I know I'm not.
I bet it's not
right.
Pudge, though.
It's not Pudge. She's the lead. She was in Lady Macbeth a few years ago, and just really recently, like as in still theaters now, she's the lead in Fighting with My Family, the pro wrestling movie with the very delicious Nick Frost. So she's in this, as is Will Poulter, who is a dude who I'm increasingly interested in just about anything that he does. He was in Detroit. He was in he was in I think he had a role in the different Race Runner movies. He was in The Revenant, a few different things. And it's also got what's the actor's name? William Jackson Harper, who plays Chidi on The Good Place. And it's this beautiful trailer about this horrific summer trip that they go on, where it looks like there's like culty type things going on, but everything, whereas Hereditary was a very dark looking film, this one is almost overtly bright. Like it feels almost like visually. A super bright Instagram filter. Like everything looks very like people in white in flower fields with long blonde hair with the saturation turned all the way up. which is remarkably off-putting in a horror film to not see just like shadows and like random ghosty jump scares. So yeah, the trailer for it's out now. It's Midsommar. Jim, Brad, have either of you guys had a chance to see it yet?
I did see it. And it's interesting because this trailer has me interested to definitely to see the film. But it's very similar to the trailer for Hereditary in a lot of ways.
Thank you. I watched it just before
Very
the
similar.
show, and I'm like,
That's
wait
okay.
a second.
Right.
This is Hereditary? And then it's like, the maker of Hereditary. And I was like, oh, okay. I get it now.
Well, also, the trailer for the movie that we'll probably see at South by as the opening night film, Us, looks very similar to, it has a very similar vibe to the Get Out trailer and the Get Out movie that we saw. I mean, it's not unusual for filmmakers' films to kind of fall into the same,
Like visual style,
the same feel and visual style. But yeah, that was the first thing that struck me. And then I'm like, okay, you can't really tell too much about what the film is really about by watching it. Just like Hereditary, you couldn't really tell what it was about. But having seen Hereditary, I'm sure there's something sinister under the cover.
We will see.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of something sinister, my movie news bit is really short here too, but I'm going to screen share. Ooh, the power of technology. I'm going to screen share my news item. A new movie poster for the newest Godzilla movie has come out in Japan.
Oh,
and
man.
Check this beautifulness out. I'm going to lock the screen on it. If you're watching on video right now, you should be able to see it on your screen. If you're listening to the magic of, digital tape delay through iTunes or Spotify, just look up new Godzilla Japanese movie poster. This poster is fucking amazing. We see a giant Godzilla on the left. We see the White House burning and in ruins with fucking King Ghidorah in the background with 3 heads. Like, come at me, like, bro. We say that all the time because our cat's name is Poe. But man, this has got me really, really excited for this movie. Jim, I wasn't sure if you had a chance to see this poster yet. I know you're a bigger Godzilla fan than I am. What are your first thoughts?
My first thought is, damn, how did this escape me? Number one. And number two, my second thought is I have to have it. But yeah, it looks, from what I'm seeing on the screen here, I'll go look at maybe if I can find a high res version of it after, but this looks pretty awesome. We haven't seen much news from the release come out recently, but yeah, I'm really excited. This poster looks amazing. So yeah, I'm loving it. Thanks for
how about you, Will?
Thanks for bringing it up.
I'm the type that's really into the idea of like color palettes and theming and stuff like that. And so not only is this a really cool looking poster, but when you think about it in conjunction with the 2014 poster, which was, I'm going to say similar in that like it was very much like dark colors with one heavy accent color, which is the red. Well, this one is dark colors with that a kind of electric blue as the highlight color. I like that it still has that continuity while also being its own thing. I think this one looks better than the last poster too, because I don't know, the background foreground of everything, that sharp blue on the scaling and with the Godzilla down at the bottom, just like flies off the poster at you. This is beautiful. And I'm kind of glad that this is the news that we're getting right now. We've already had 2 major release trailers, I believe, for the movie. I don't need to see any more trailers. No. Give me some posters. Give me a few things like this. I'm already going to buy the ticket.
And give me the movie. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, I'm so freaking pumped for this. And this this poster, I think fuels it even more than like another trailer would. I'm almost afraid to see, more footage from the film. But this is pretty awesome. So I don't know if this poster exists anywhere to buy yet, Jim, where we can get access to it. Is it a poster over in Japan? But maybe we'll have to see what we can find.
Yeah. We'll take a look.
Sweet.
Mm-hmm. Know any Japanese bears?
We do.
Bears who live in Japan. Yeah, we might have to hit them up for something.
Maybe you can help us out, friends.
Calling a favor.
All right. Well, speaking of friends helping out, are we ready to talk about Happy Death Day to You?
Are we already there? Wow.
We just talk about movie news more. This is fun. Yeah, no, I guess we need to.
I have a feeling where we're
review time.
going on this one.
Oh boy. All right. Well, we got to do it because we put it in the show title. But we'll see. We'll see what we think. We are going to talk about Happy Death Day to You, which is a follow-up film to Happy Death Day, which came out, was that last year? The year before? Felt like it was a super quick turnaround.
2017, but it was the fall of 2017.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Okay.
Halloween. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Okay. So if you haven't seen Happy Death Day or Happy Death Day to You, feel free to hang out with us. We're going to talk about the film spoiler free for probably 10 minutes, 15 minutes or so. Maybe you'll get some information that may help you decide if you want to see these movies or not. And then we'll give you fair warning before going to Spoiler Town. So if you don't want to be spoiled at that point, you can jump away. Real quick, want to give a big shout out to Eric Jones. Hey, Eric, welcome. Glad to have you on the show with us this week. Are we ready, gentlemen,
yes,
to dive into the review? All right. Well, then here we go. Our discussion of Happy Death Day to You. All right. So, casting my brain back through the years, Will, I think you kind of dug the first one a little bit to some degree, maybe. I know, Jim, you and I kind of liked it. I'm really interested to hear where we come down on the sequel. Will, if you don't mind maybe kicking us off, just tell us kind of the basic premise of the movie. Is it worth seeing in theaters, renting, skipping? And I mean, don't be afraid to contrast and compare with the original a little bit. Like, did it improve? Did it make it worse? What do you think?
Yeah, so Happy Death Day to You, as you mentioned, is the follow-up film to that 2017 horror film that sort of took everyone by surprise in that the premise of it shouldn't have worked. Groundhog Day, but with murder. Let me rephrase that. It should work, but it shouldn't have worked as presented, with kind of like a preppy ditzy college girl as the protagonist having to go through these infinite death cycles. And yet somehow it did. It was not a great, but it was a really solid film that knew exactly what it was and delivered upon that premise. So now we've got this rushed out sequel, and I do feel that it was very underbaked and does not capture quite as much of the joy and the energy that I really wanted to see out of this franchise. So Happy Death Day to You follows Tree, who is played by Jessica Roth, as she last time she died over and over again. Well, now it's a few months later, and gosh, it's really hard to say exactly what happens here, but the same thing happens, but a little bit different. And we'll talk about what that means specifically in spoilers. But one of the things that I liked about this film is I'm the type of person who really likes continuity of characters, in that, like, I want to know kind of like, well, what's happening to people, where are they at, what are they doing? And I think this film did a decent job of remembering its cast from last movie and kind of saying, well, what's happening to them now as the story goes on. What it does a poor job of is focusing its attention on one streamlined story. Here we have a story that starts as one thing, very quickly abandons that. And, you know, it kind of goes from science fiction into horror, into kind of more of the same, and now a different version of the same. Like, and it does all of this without skipping a beat. And I think that those beats are sort of necessary. I felt like I had narrative whiplash as the story pulled me through its twists and turns. But because none of the twists and turns were particularly compelling, I found myself not really caring about whether or not Tree, accomplished her goals, or how she dealt with like the stakes of the decisions she was making. To her credit, I think Jessica Roth is the gem of this franchise. I don't know that she's always a super compelling actress, but when she gets to play into sort of the more horror elements of this, I think she does a really, really good job. I wish she had more of that to play with. I wish this movie was maybe a little bit less self-aware. I wish that some of the cast members who showed up in this film for the newcomers had something to do, because there are a lot of new cast members whose job is to just be present on screen and maybe have like one like throwaway joke or throwaway quip or something. I don't know. I did not hate this movie. I did not hate Happy Death Day to You. I think there are parts of it that work well enough. It's fun seeing these characters again. But it's not one that I would recommend people rush out and see in theaters. This is one I think it's okay to, going back to our previous discussion, wait for Netflix, wait for Redbox, wait for whatever streaming platform. This is not one that requires any urgency. This is more of a rainy day film at best.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting that, Will, and I'm resonating a little bit with some of what you're saying. And one thing that stood out to me that this film did very well for me was really in line with like,
It ended?
No. It really was in line in terms of that continuity piece. I like that word that you chose, Will, because when the movie picks up, it feels like it's still the first movie. Like the setting is the same, the dorm room is the same. We've got elements from the first movie, like the ringtone on Tree's phone. Like I felt like I was back in the first movie again, and then it started kind of adding some new stuff on. And so I kind of dug that. I was like, oh my God, like I'm back in this universe again. This is totally working for me. The problem is that it then adds the new stuff on and veers off in this weird, crazy direction. And it just felt super unfocused. Like it didn't really know what it wanted to be. Like, does it want to be a horror movie? Does it want to be a quirky, fun sci-fi movie? You know, in trying to be all of these things, a heartfelt drama with like character grit. Like, it's kind of like pouring all these like beautifully colored liquids into one bowl, and the mixture turns out black. Like it just, I don't know. It didn't work that well for me, unfortunately. And I felt like if they would have picked one tone, maybe two tones, and gone with it, it may have been more successful. But it was just trying to be too many things all at the same time, which is unfortunate. I really loved the first film. This one, I'll be honest, I didn't like it really much at all. I mean, there's a couple of bright spots, but we're seeing this film in the theater, and I turned to Jim and I'm like, I literally feel like I'm in my own horror movie right now watching this film. So I don't want to say I abject hated it. I respect, the filmmakers and what they were trying to do. And, it takes a lot to make a film like this. But I do kind of wonder that continuity piece, if it means they jumped right into making the second movie without much time in between the first two. And maybe that's why the story was kind of half-baked and everything felt rushed. And I think it suffers big time as a result. So, Jim, how about you?
Yeah, I strongly dislike this movie, probably even more than you guys did. I agree with everything you guys said for why I think this movie is not good. Certainly not as good as the first one. I rather enjoyed the first one. It felt fresh. Felt like some really sparkly ideas that I could get on board with. It was funny. It was scary in parts. It kept me guessing through. I wanted to find out how this thing was going to resolve. This movie, I would say, after that first continuity piece you guys talked about, and Will, when you said the thing went off the rails, it really went off the rails, and that was pretty early for me. So here I am sitting through at least an hour and 15 minutes of a movie that I didn't really care for, and I didn't care much about the characters anymore, even the old characters, the new characters. Brad, I think you hit it on the head. I think the first movie was a surprise success. And they were probably like, hey, dude, you got to get us another movie like within 2 years. So go off and do it. And I don't really think they had a solid single idea to base this movie on. They kind of started out at the same thing. Then it had this weird sci-fi element that didn't work for me at all with this, like, I'm not going to, we can go into spoilers and talk about it, but I'll just say, I don't think this movie's worth going to see. Sammy W says, I'd watch that. Oh, I don't know if he means what I'm talking about now or something I mentioned in the chat.
I think he meant the documentary you were talking about.
Oh, okay. I hope it's that, because I don't know what I said to sell you on this movie. Because I was kind of bored out of my mind. Although I will say, it's got some hot looking characters in it. Steve Zissou is a guy that we like. We saw him in a movie called help me out. What was the name of it?
We saw him on Togetherness on HBO.
Togetherness,
TV series.
Right, with Mark Duplass. And also there's a cop in this movie that's extremely cute. So, but beyond that, not much of interest here. I wish they had been able to keep up, and who knows how this movie's going to perform financially, if we're going to get a third one and they get another crack at it. Would I give it another shot? I don't know, man. It might be one of those things where I have to see it because I've seen the first two, but my expectations will not be very high.
You'll kind of plug your nose and sip.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to also say that, like, I don't actually hate that they went kind of like bonkers with the story. I think that there's a certain part of, if you're the writer, if you're the director, if you're the filmmakers on this, you have to be incredibly cognizant of the fact that if you just make the same film a second time, the negative reviews are 100% going to write themselves for this type of thing. Like, oh, this one should have stayed dead, instead just came back with the, it's like they're going to, you have to be cognizant of the fact that in a story about things repeating themselves over and over again, like if you just make the same one again, it's not going to work very well. So I'm good with, they went some crazy places. And I think that if they had just picked one of those crazy places to go, I would have been 100% on board. They could have gone crazier as long as they had told a focused story about whatever that big idea was. Instead, and you guys have both mentioned this, they wove through several of them in ways that didn't feel developed, that didn't feel like they really had enough time to really figure out, like, what are the emotional stakes of these narrative ebb and flows that we're doing. As a result, it became messy, and I ended up hating all of the ideas, whereas if they had focused on one, I probably could have loved it.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't suggesting that they should have just redone the same thing.
Oh, yeah, I know.
They need that. Obviously, that's not going to work, but they should have. This one kind of went the opposite way, and they just threw a bunch of stuff at the wall, but nothing stuck. Yeah. And so that was the issue for me.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking spoilers may be the way to go at this point. I'm guessing that if we talk about this anymore without spoilers, we're going to end up just frustrating ourselves. So if you guys are down, why don't we go ahead and make that transition? Yes, are we good?
Yeah. Let's do it.
Cool. All right. So for those of you who are watching the show live or listening at home through iTunes or Spotify, feel free to skip ahead using the time index in the show notes if that's available to you. If you're listening live, come back in about 10 minutes when we wrap up with some plugs. But our spoiler section is officially open. We've opened the curtains. We're welcoming you in. Here we go. So when we say it went off the rails, I'm assuming we mean the whole, like, we're actually in a parallel universe now, and we're repeating the same day over and over and over again. Is that right? Or was there something more to it than that?
Oh, the whole weird science aspect to this.
We start off with the story that shows this movie sort of goes in three different areas, right? Because you start off with this story where it looks like the premise of this film is going to be, it repeats on death, but with a different character. This time being the roommate from the first
Ryan.
Ryan. And so then it shifts to no, now we're in spoilers. Now there's a second one of him, and they're having to figure out why he's the killer. But now, boom, they're in an alternate dimension. And so I think that you have two very separate ideas right there. The telling the same story, but from a different character's perspective, to now it's Tree's perspective again, but it is a different dimension where people behave differently. Either of those ideas, I think, could have been really good if they had been given the entire film, but they weren't. And so that's my issue.
Yeah, I can't envision myself watching we had a weird science-y kind of thing going on here with this whatever the fuck this thing was that made sparks and rays and bent the timeline or whatever it was, made the lights dim, and then we had
weird science.
And when we had a heist movie, when the dean was trying to shut it down and we're trying to steal the keys, and and then we also had like the continuation of like the murder mystery part of it, right? And this time it ends up being the guy we thought it might have been in the first movie, right?
Right.
We had the same character, the doctor and the cheating doctor and his wife, who in this movie, I guess he ended up being the killer guy, right? In this movie.
Yeah. And I think, oh, go ahead, Brett.
Well, we still had the escaped prisoner like killing people, but the doctor was a killer on top of that. Well, and his wife.
Yeah, and I didn't find any of that particularly interesting. It seemed to strip the horror stuff away too. I didn't see much horror in this.
Would this have been more interesting if this time, instead of it being all about Tree resetting the day, it was the killer getting foiled by the day resetting constantly and trying to like change up his tactics?
That's an idea. That's a
third
story.
Movie. Yeah.
You can riff off of that indefinitely. This one, because it had those multiple ideas, it didn't know which way to riff. For example, so as Jim just mentioned, like there's a part of the film, like the back half of the film, where she's trying to figure out like how to learn all this dimension stuff, and then every so often she remembers, oh yeah, there's also this killer, and they have to like stop the story to go deal with killer stuff before they can recontinue the story stuff. I hated the killer stuff in this one, and that should have been the most compelling part, the mystery of the whodunit. That's what was so fun about the first one, and kind of the shit that happened to her along the way. And this one, it was such an afterthought. I would have loved to have seen, just tell the story from a different person's perspective. Maybe the killer, maybe from, like stick with the story you had at the beginning. Make one of your side characters the person that's repeating each time, and giving Jessica Roth still kind of the lead role, but having to play the character who like every day has to realize that this person is now resetting and dealing with it in different ways. That all would have been fun. Instead, we get this movie with these really terrible themes and really terrible scenes. We have this awful scene where the Danielle character pretends to be a blind French woman to try to seduce the prince of the dean so that they can get the keys. And it was like a fucking Bugs Bunny cartoon, like level of stupidity. Like I've seen this done before. Bugs puts on drag and seduces Elmer Fudd to try to like get out of being shot. Like that's exactly what this was, but with like real humans.
And didn't work as well as Bugs Bunny.
No.
I thought the movie in the first 5 minutes with the roommate character, Ryan, I thought it, because he was the one who was experiencing kind of the resets, the first couple of resets. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be cool. I want to see what they do with this. And like you said, they totally kind of abandon that whole thing at some point in the movie. And he becomes another one of these just like side characters that doesn't really do much, unfortunately. So
yeah, and it's too bad because they could have found a cool way to carry that through. Like, Ryan's resets could have even been happening at the same time as Tree's resets were happening in the first movie, maybe it's happening adjacently, right? And we see things from the first movie going on, like as he's resetting. And then he figures out, oh my God, this is happening to more than just me.
Hey, wait, I think I saw a Netflix series that was just like that recently.
Oh, really?
But way better.
Yeah, with two characters have the same kind of thing going on, and then they
Wait
meet.
a second. Is this going to spoil me on?
Yes,
No,
it will. So we won't talk
Okay,
anymore about
okay,
Russian.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's cool that I inadvertently stumbled into that, I guess. But
Yeah.
that would have been a lot more entertaining to me. So maybe after this, we'll watch some Russian Doll with dinner. I don't know.
Maybe.
I think the thing that bothered me the most coming out of it, like everything so far is just like, was I entertained or was I not stuff? You know, like, oh, I could have liked the story better if it had done this. But I think the thing that stuck with me the most and I think actively irritated me the most was the big choice that Tree has to make. So one of her storylines in the first film was she's not coping very well with the death of her mother from several years prior. So now she's thrown into this alternate dimension where she has to make a choice. She can stay in this dimension where her mother is now alive and they can continue that relationship and continue to build and grow things together. Or she can go back to the other one because the guy that she's been dating for 6 weeks is in love with her in that other dimension. And it's a tough decision. And I have to say, like, that feels remarkably insulting for a lot of very obvious reasons. Also, on top of all of that, the dude in this one ends up falling in love with her anyway. So her choice is sort of like almost pointless by the time that she makes it. But I mean, most people would probably choose being able to spend time with that loved one that they lost over the guy that you started dating 6 weeks ago. Because I looked at it, it went from like September something to I guess December something. It's more like, I guess maybe like 3 months, but still not long enough to like be a forever thing. I don't know. Yeah. It was kind of insulting.
Yeah, there was so much about this movie that I want to forget.
Well, Eric Jones.
Can I reset to before the movie started?
Eric Jones in the chat says any kind of time travel repeat story has to do two things. First, it has to make chronological sense. And second, the character stories have to be interesting. I think this movie fails at both, to be honest. So, Eric, this franchise, the first movie did a good job of that, but the second one, not so much. So if you do go, seek out Happy Death Day, which was very good, just forget that a sequel is a real thing and you'll be fine.
Did we we're in spoilers, so I guess we can spoil the first movie a little bit. Do you recall what was triggering the resets?
We found that out in this one. In the first movie, there was nothing, like, we didn't know. And in this one, we find out that all of the resets, both these ones and the ones from the first film, were caused by the weird science kids and their weird time loop machine. Which I think is fine. It's a fine idea to make basically like all of those things loop together. It's, just needed to have done it better.
But alas, it didn't. So, well, guys, are we ready to move on to some plugs?
Sure. Let's
plug
this.
All right.
Leaking Happy Death Day boat up.
All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and transition then away from our movie conversation and get into some plugs. It's our part of the show where we put things on your radar we think you should check out or maybe get involved with. And I'll go ahead and kick us off. Mine's pretty short. We are going to be at South by Southwest Film Festival starting on Friday of this week. Definitely very excited, Will, to stay with you and Wiggles for a few days and then see movies like it's our job. We know a lot of folks in the Austin area who are also going to be going to the film festival. If you guys want to, say hi, hang out, grab a beer at the Highball at the Draft House or something in between films. We would love to chat movies with you guys. Really excited to get in and just see a whole fuck ton of movies. So if you're going to be in the area, if you're going to be at the festival, give us a heads up. We would love to hang out and say hello. Otherwise, maybe we'll see you at the Iron Bear or something. But definitely jonesing for some movies. I want to ask you guys real quick. Unfortunately, I'm also working the whole week on site in Austin, so I won't be able to see as many movies. But Jim and Will, if you had a goal for the number of movies you want to see this week, and remember, because we are going to be there as press, we have to see as many as we can. Jim, what would your goal number be?
It would probably be, I would say 30 is 28 is a goal, and probably 30 is a stretch goal for me.
Okay. All right. Will, how about you?
Yeah, that's probably about right. I think when I think about what we've done at South Bys in the past, we usually go, we normally see somewhere in the 31 to 32 film kind of family. That's usually about where we land. So I think the idea of like, if we hit 30, we're in good shape is definitely true. But I think if we hit, I mean, honestly, we're above and beyond the Call of Duty with that. You know, I know there's several people that do press and they see like 10 or 12 or 15 or so. And they're just like, oh man, this is an exhausting week. We're just like,
give me more. Give me more. What? I get to stand in. I get to stand in line again. Shit. Yeah.
We'll probably. I think we'll probably land around 30 plus or minus.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll have to see how close you get to those numbers. I think last year I saw 12, so I want to see if maybe I can get to that.
Well, but you have a day job to do, so.
Well, that's true. Absolutely. Right. But let's see, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, that's 3 solid movies. If I see at least 3 or 4 a day, you know, and then catch a couple during the week if I can.
Yeah.
I could get there.
Yeah. You'll get there. We'll probably see on Sunday, maybe even 5, but you know, so that's at least 10 Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Right. So you're already in good shape before you hit the rest of the week.
All right. Can't wait. All right, let's go on down to Jim. Jim, what's your plug this week?
Well, speaking of streaming, which we talked about in the news, and time jumps, which I'm going to jump back in time to a streaming movie from 2000 that called The Contender. I don't know if either of you have seen this, Brad. I don't think you have, but I'm just going to read this. This is, think of like a feature-length version of something like West Wing. Senator Lane Hansen, who is played by Joan Allen, by the way, in a really good role, is a contender for U.S. Vice President to Jeff Bridges. But information and disinformation about her past surfaces during her confirmation hearings that threatens to derail her bid for the confirmation. So this is a really excellent drama, like the West Wing. It's I said West Wing, right? Before
you did.
Like the West Wing, this is a very kind of a talky movie. It's not really an action movie. It's got some really great performances. Gary Oldman is in this, playing one of the senators. Shelley Runyon. Of course, I mentioned Joan Allen, Jeff Bridges as the president, Christian Slater, Sam Elliott, one. Which I love. This is no beard, Sam Elliott, no mustache.
Whoa,
no mustache, Sam Elliott. It looks kind of strange. But yeah, Mariel Hemingway. I really like this movie a lot, and it's weird. Do you ever have an experience when you're watching a movie that's maybe an older one, and you're like, I think I might have saw this at one time or another, but I remember some bits and pieces of it, but I don't really remember the whole thing. That's the feeling I got from this movie. Liked it. Just kind of a cross between, you know, West Wing, what was the House of Cards kind of thing. But really, really good performances. What's interesting about this is how the movie is generally about how one side wants to take down this female candidate for vice president. And are they doing it because they're misogynist, or it's never quite clear. And you can kind of draw the parallels to what we've recently gone through with some of the election stuff we had in the previous election cycle. So excellent movie. I'd recommend it. The Contender is pretty good. Check it out. I watched it on Amazon Prime. It's on Amazon Prime right now. So you can rent it on Amazon Prime for like $4.
Awesome.
Worth a watch.
Yeah, you showed me the trailer. It definitely looks good.
Oh, it's right up your alley.
Yeah. It might be something to watch on the plane on the way to Austin later this week.
Right.
So
good idea.
Looks like a good recommendation. Hey, real quick, Will, I know you've got a plug too, but a member of our live chat audience also has a plug to share. Sam from Denver says people should check out Now Apocalypse 2 streaming on Stars. I haven't even heard of that, Sam, so I'm gonna have to look into that a little bit. But Sam usually makes some pretty good recommendations. He turned us on to the Zatoichi samurai films, and now we went out and bought the whole set of those movies, and we're working our way through. So Sam, thanks for the recommendation. We'll have to look that one up. Will,
Now Apocalypse is not a documentary about the making of Apocalypse Now. I just want to put that out there.
Although that's what I would name it.
Yeah, exactly.
It would make sense, right? But Now Apocalypse, now streaming, now on Stars. Anyway, Will, what have you got this week?
So I ended up watching like 4 hours of documentaries this week. The rub is it was the same documentary. It was the 4-hour Leaving Neverland documentary on HBO, which it's hard to recommend because of the subject matter. It's about two of the victims of Michael Jackson's abuse, telling their side of the story. And so because of that, it's a hard watch. It's a very difficult watch to hear these very candid stories. But I think that it's very eye-opening. I think it's it very much makes you think about sort of the passes that we sort of give to people who are at a certain level of popularity or status, and why we kind of hand wave some of the things that they do. It's a very compelling doc. I know it did very well at Sundance, I believe. And it went to HBO right away, and they aired it over 2 parts on Sunday night and Monday night. So it's there. I ended up if you don't have HBO, you can do what I did. I just got the Amazon Prime. I have Amazon Prime, and you can subscribe to channels there. And so I did the 7-day free trial to HBO on my Amazon, watched those, and canceled it before the trial was up. You didn't hear that tip from me, but you can watch it for free if you do that. If you haven't done it yet.
At least that's totally legal, Will. There's other ways that aren't quite as legal to watch it.
There are other ways to do it, and I don't do any of those because
don't recommend that.
Not something I feel comfortable with. But but this is, it's a free trial to last me over until I have HBO and the new house set up. But yeah, it's Leaving Neverland. It's a sobering watch, but I don't want to say necessarily a must watch, but it's definitely a good watch. I don't know. It's really hard. It's hard to use positive glowing terms about such a.
Yeah, I'm not sure if, man, 4 hours of that rough stuff, I'm not sure that I'm up for that when, I don't know.
All right. Well, everybody, I think it draws us to a close for this week. Next week, of course, we're going to be with Will in Austin, Texas for South by Southwest. We're going to have to figure out what we're going to do about the show next week, because we may be in a movie screening when we would normally record and broadcast the show. So what we may do is, I don't know, ad hoc some little recordings in here and there. We'll figure something out. We'll give you a heads up, probably give you some insights into the festival. We've got some really cool films just looking at the slate that I'm jazzed to check out with you boys. So that's going to be fun. Again, if you're in Austin, if you're going to be around the festival, be sure to hit us up. Love to chat movies with you guys, and we will see you all next time. Have a good one, everyone. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.